Okay, we're here, predictably on time, talking about chaos. And we were just talking about being in the coffee shop, which is kind of an unpredictable, like you can't control or predict what goes on in the coffee shop. So this rose out of something that happened in your life,
Hmm.
or several things that happened in your life. You told the Minecraft story on
Right.
Sunday, which is a lot of chaos coming at you at once
Hmm.
that you couldn't predict or plan for and how it threw you off. So I guess that's kind of what we're talking about today. And then you also want to touch on the topic of masking
Yeah, and we could probably put that at the end
and
because
hey
I think
Bex.
um, it probably helps to talk more about chaos first. But yeah, so like the reason why we first brought it up. Well, I mean you observed it, Jeff, right? Is in the discussion of the incident that happened in that Minecraft game, which um, it was based on like a interpersonal situation gone awry with the other players. Um,
The
right, that was
reason I noticed it though is because you had been saying how planned out everything was, and that's what clued me into it. Is you talking about how you had everything so carefully planned and you like to account for all the possibilities in advance and all that. And then that's what made me realize it was chaos. Otherwise, I might not have noticed, except for your preference to having everything planned and predictable.
right, and um, you know, an interesting, and like what you just described there isn't too unlike just what it takes to have a career in investing, like I've done. Right, it's just you're analyzing the risk, and you're making capital allocations accordingly, and trying to manage it. So it's a natural way to think about that stuff. And what's different about investing, because obviously, like I have money on the line for things, right? So obviously that means that there's some chaos that can happen and that I'm okay with that, but it's not an interpersonal kind.
Hmm.
But much of, if not most of the chaos in our lives, social animals that we are, is interpersonal.
Well,
um,
people are unpredictable.
yeah, and I used to, I had this younger friend I was mentoring one time, and I told her, because she was telling me about something that didn't happen, and she's like, basically someone was doing something that doesn't make sense. And I like said, people are under no obligation to make sense. If you want there to be more sense in the world, you have to be somebody who makes sense. And because sometimes she would do things that didn't make sense, and I was like, well, did that help your situation? They didn't make sense. You responded by doing something that also didn't make sense. You could have at least, to whatever extent that the situation could have improved, you could have done something that was made sense, if only even consistent
Made
with your own
sense to
goal.
you.
No, no. So like her own goals. Like, here's what you want. Here's what you did. This doesn't lead to what you want. And do you see how this doesn't lead to what you want, and how you probably could have
That's
just
still
known that
making
already?
sense to you. Because I think everything has sense. Like I think very few people act randomly for no reason whatsoever. Like even if they're making poor choices, there's a reason behind it that they could probably articulate at the time in the moment, even
Right.
if it doesn't
So,
match up
sure,
with what makes sense to you.
sure. But like taking the like game for example, what right? For most games, there's a especially as you play more and more, there's a narrow set of ways to play the game that work versus compared to ways that you can play that don't work very well. And when you initially play a game, a lot of different things can seem like they make sense at first, and then as you get more familiar with the way it works, you can adjust. And the question is, as you're going through iterations of life, right? It's how do you notice what works and what doesn't, right? She's younger, right? So this is why I was pointing out. It's like it's made sense at the time, but think about how like it was likely to go this way, and you're a smart person. You might have been able to determine this going forward. Don't you probably configure this is extractable in the future. And so the point is like that's sort of like how we have to learn to deal with chaos. And yeah, people often don't make sense, but we can think about how to do it ourselves, but still be okay with the fact that other people may still not make sense. And but it is still very tricky because I think the thing that you had said that is that I certainly seem to have a problem with my relationship with chaos. And I think you were right about that. And so, one of the takeaways I had is that I need to think about like how I can, it feels, kind of like an odd phrase, but to be better acquainted with chaos than has been the case in recent years. I feel like maybe in the past it was possible that I was better acquainted with it, but I feel like there's. I remember one time I was talking to a therapist back in the fall, and I said I feel like in the course of my adult life there are some aspects of myself that have been lost that I need to recover, and maybe my relationship with chaos is one of those things. Um, and uh, um, so thinking about that, I thought like, well, what are ways I can engage with chaos positively, essentially, right? Uh, and I thought about like things I do, and I thought it was interesting for the fact that like I like to play those Mario Party games, which are extremely chaotic, and that's in fact the fun part for me is this the chaotic nature and navigating them in a way that's fun. It's interesting. And I thought it's odd that I can like that game, um, um, and yet still not have that. But I also don't get to play it very much. So to the extent that I'm in chaotic situations, they're usually negative, and so I need to figure out ways to bring in more chaos, but and not just be stuck with the ones that are negative, right? Uh, and so I thought, well, what's something I can do that is probably going to be chaotic, but certainly not something that can be orderly, but that I can still work with. And I thought about, like I talked before, there was this girl I kept seeing at the coffee shop. So thankfully she's not here right now. Um, and now that would be chaotic if she were here. But um, I thought, well, okay, I can go and talk to her, because she's been looking at me, smiling at me. Just figure like, okay, let's just talk to her and see what's going on here, right? And and I figured I was probably going to do that either Tuesday or even today because I usually see her on Tuesday or Wednesday. Um, but one of my friends, it's an older woman named Susie. I talked about her before. I think she's like about 70 years old. She and I will meet and get coffee usually a couple times a month. I first met her when I was a barista at Starbucks back in 2019, so we've been friends up to this point. And uh, so we were gonna get coffee Monday morning at 10. So I show up a bit early to get a table. I walk in, I look for seats, and I see in the corner there's the girl who's been looking at me, smiling at me a lot, and I'm like, oh, she's here. And I thought, a bit unprepared for this because now I'm thinking, okay, I have to figure out how to fit this into the fact that I'm planning to meet Susie because it's like I don't want to delay it. So the situation, it's at that moment it already is a bit more chaotic, right? Like I'm something is her presence is unexpected, and I'm figuring out how do I want to factor that into how I'm going to navigate Monday. Um, so what I decided to do is I actually tried to leverage it to an opportunity. I see an open table that's on the other side of the shop, but where she will have a very clear line of sight. And I figured I'm going to let her see me just having a good time with my friend Susie. Susie shows up. She and I sit for about 60 or 90 minutes. We chat. And then after she finishes and she has to go, um, uh, I work on some of my own things for a moment. Then I get my coffee, I refill my coffee, and I just go and I walk up to the girl and introduce myself. And like I told you in your Discord, it was a pretty good conversation. She basically just went right into it. Like she's very open, very warm and friendly. Um, and we had like a 20-minute conversation, and she talked about like talked about how we both basically are working remotely, but we choose to do it at the coffee shop rather than home in most cases because we don't like doing it at our apartments. She told me about what she's doing. She's a graduate student at the university here. Told her about what I do. She actually thought a lot of what I had to say about stocks is interesting because she was like doing business administration there. She's like a med business administration grad student. I don't remember the exact phrasing, but it was something like that. Um, and it was a very interesting, engaging conversation, completely unlike what I expected, which is interesting, right? So this is chaotic. It went on for about 20 minutes, and then we resumed our days. And I haven't seen her since, but at least now, like we've introduced, I know her name, um, and And she is taken, so she's not somebody I could date. But I don't think that's necessarily important. I think it was a good experience, and I'm, better integrated with some of the other regulars at the coffee shop. So it was a chaotic situation that I sought out, um, and I think I got a good result from it. And of course, the the domino effect of my thought process was prompted by your observation about my relationship with chaos, Jeff.
Because you were deliberately trying to have a more comfortable relationship with it.
Yes, yes. I thought, Jeff has a point here. Obviously, this is something I've already thought about doing, right? But it's like, let's think about what Jeff said. Like, it's even more reason to just go ahead and do it.
Well, it sounded like you go through life with a plan for every occasion. So anything that life throws at you, you just have a plan for it that you pull out. And the other day in the game, there were several things coming at you at once that you didn't necessarily have a plan for, you couldn't figure out in the moment. And I was thinking that that's like life. That's normal life to me. Like nobody, when they leave their house during the day, can predict every single thing that's going to happen to them and have a plan for every single event they encounter. So it seems healthy to like to kind of be able to roll in the moment with unpredictable things that come your way. And
Mm-hmm.
it seemed like you were not comfortable with that, and you had this expectation that you could make it through a day on your skill of being able to predict and plan for all likely occurrences. And
Mm-hmm.
that just didn't seem like a realistic way to live.
Yeah, and I saw what you were getting at there, and um, yeah. So but that's why I
I
kept.
mean, I guess you could if you plan your life in such a way that it is very predictable. Like you drive to work the same route every day. You go to the same grocery store and get like. There's probably ways to make your life predictable, but even then, I'd say anytime even if you're in your house, there's potential for chaos. You know,
Yeah.
I watch a lot of those reality shows, and they're always throwing in twists into the game to throw the players off. Because if the
Mhm.
players know the game too well, then they're gonna have an advantage. Like their plans will always work, so they're constantly throwing in twists that the players don't expect to see how the players like how they adjust their strategy to the twist, and that
Yeah.
seems to me more reflective of what life does.
Yeah, and what's interesting is because that used to be something that would happen when I was in ROTC, and they were training us um, like we were doing our missions in the woods. Is like they put us in charge of the squad with a platoon. It's our chance to lead it, and we would go through like a simulated mission, and then we'd be graded on it. But a regular thing that would occur is like there's the mission we're briefed on, and then they would throw in some sort of curveball. They didn't do it every single time, but it was a pretty frequent thing. And because if you do it every time, then you always know a curveball is coming, and then it's not chaotic. But
So you didn't know when it
right, and the nature of
chaos
it, and so
because
they
they were
want to,
probably trying to mimic life, like prepare you
yeah,
for.
yeah. Sometimes the mission will go pretty much as you expect, and then sometimes you will just be assigned a different mission in the middle of it and be like, hey, this mission you were doing, it no longer matters. Something happened that just makes it irrelevant. Now you got to do this, and you got to be able to just pivot on the spot. And not only you have to do that, but you have to get your whole unit to do it with you, and everything still moves smoothly, right? Um, and so I had some experience with that. It's it's this is almost why I say like because the army kind of started to build this in me, but it's as though through the decade that's passed, a little bit more than that now actually. That there was a piece of me that got lost to the point that I find something like that extremely perplexing. And um,
Like,
and
would do you think what happened in the Minecraft game that you could draw on the military, your military instincts with your training
uh,
as a model for how to react to it?
yeah, I think because if you're just kind of cruising around through life, I think the one thing about the army is you're always very mission focused, and so when you're hit with chaos, if you're very mission focused, you can say, all right, what is the mission? And then you sort of think you can look at everything, you can interpret reality from the lens of here's what I need to do stick to this. And if you're kind of just going through life, um, it's very easy just to react to things and not have um, like a focus of like, what am I doing? What am I trying to do? What are my priorities? And so like, for example, if we just think of like a usual interpersonal type of incident, like people who get mad and say ugly things to each other, I don't think most people aspire to say ugly things to people. I don't think most people like when they were kids, like when I grew up, I want to be somebody who's just mean a lot and just makes people cry and just says the exact same things that'll, but in the moment we often do that. And then, after the fact, people will come to regret what they said. Um, and so, you can be more in touch with like, what are your priorities in life? And that can help. Um, and
Or even
help.
in the moment, like your mission might be to get to the grocery store or catch a certain bus
Yeah.
or something like buses are can be chaotic too. But like even in the game, you had specific missions.
I
Even in
did.
that little moment, you had these little tiny missions you were trying to accomplish as you were
Yeah.
making this journey.
Yeah. And the main mission there was I was trying to do the whole investing project with Jamonkey. And I think the mistake there was that um, by getting involved in the nobility, that created additional like side missions or whatever that complicated the situation. Um, because I think if that a big part of what made it controversial was the fact that I was a noble. So uh, um, it would have gone very differently if I had just been an ordinary citizen. I can tell. So um, there is that, and so I recognize that now, and that it's probably too quick to go into that, even though there were not a lot of obvious signs at that moment that it would come with those risk factors. And this is also why I started to think more about like my place in those things. And it was around the time I became more gradually aware that there was something a little off was shortly after um, I got moved into the ability, and I was able to see more of the big picture of how things work there. Right, some of that just did not become clear until afterward, and that's when I began to think, okay, I need to sort of ease back and do that. And then of course this happened before I could really act on those gradual realizations. So um, but I think another thing too is that um, like on the idea of like chaos is like so part of what helped with that is like kind of had something to do in my own life. It's not even a game to like move on, right? So I'm like, I've seen this for, let me just do this and see what happens. And I don't know what will happen, but I will just try to roll with it the best I can, right? And so I think I need to look for more things like that. And if I have like a lot more going on, I'll put it this way. You know how like uh, so I've got like a portfolio of investments, and on one day one of them will be doing well, and another will be doing badly, and another day it could be different. But they both got their ups and downs, and over time I think it's going to be up. But it's not like suddenly I'm worried that like my portfolio is worth half of what I put in, right? It's kind of balancing itself out, and so I'm not looking at a bleak picture because I can sort of see that the sum is like everything's balancing itself out, and I don't have enough sort of interactions with chaos that I have enough good things balancing it out, and I could probably do that if I tried to um, like I mentioned before, better acquaint myself with it. And so there's one situation when I got to do that. And so for me, the puzzle is it's like, how do I identify those opportunities? I guess, right? I guess you could say to the extent that something is that we would call it an opportunity, there's a chaotic element to it, right?
Yeah, I guess. Like, and also, like, I wish Hank were here. Maybe he'll come on later because he's a Discordian, and their whole paradigm is built on the idea that chaos and order are subjective human categories. None of it exists objectively in reality. It's how we experience them from our subjective perspective as to whether something is order or chaos. So you could see opportunities as a form of chaos.
Hmm.
I guess. Um, I, to me, they're just paradigms for classifying phenomena, but then most things are.
Hmm.
When I was little, we used to go to Astroworld on vacation in Houston. It was a Six Flags amusement park in Houston, Texas.
Hmm.
And every year I would get so excited. And we had the maps that we would pick up from our trips. And so I would get the map out every year and I would plan out the rides. And I would plan out what ride I'm going to ride first and next. And I would spend weeks getting so excited and visualizing my trip there. And my mom told me one day, she said, if you plan out your trip like that, you're going to be disappointed because you don't know what's going to happen the day we get there. She said some of the rides might be closed. You might not be able to ride them in the order you're wanting to ride, and it's going
Hmm.
to throw off your day and frustrate you. And sure enough, that's what happened on one trip. And that's when I realized that that kind of planning for the future, it's much more fun to not plan, show up at the amusement park, and just ride whatever ride in the moment that the day
Yeah.
takes you
So
on.
I think that's
And
one
ever
thing.
since that moment, ever since that day, from that one little lesson, I stopped planning. I no longer became a planner from that point forward.
Yeah. So I think one thing that I still kept from the army that has it's been easier to implement is um, like they had an important thing called contingency plans, and so it's like here's what you're going to do, and then here's what you'll do in case this happens and it
Yeah.
disrupts your ability. And part of the idea is like you kind of just give yourself you design a plan with some gaps so that you have wiggle room, right? So it's like um, maybe if you are going to plan for an amusement park, rather than say like everything will happen at this time, you'll sort of break it into like three chunks of the day. And you'll be like, okay, this time of the day, I'll try to do these things. At this time of the day, I'll try to do these things. At this time of the day, I'll try to do these things. You may do it based on what you know is open at that time. Whether it's going to be rainy or drizzling at one point of the day, right? You can, and then based on
Or
what
just
happens,
don't plan at all.
yeah. I mean, you could not plan it all.
The
Um,
most fun day I ever had at the amusement park was one day we showed up and it was raining and half the rides were closed and nobody was at the park. And we got to go on all the rides that were open in the rain as many times as we wanted because there were no lines and I had more fun in the rain and I could have not have planned or predicted any of that.
Yeah, and so what I am saying is that to the extent that if someone were to plan a trip to an amusement park, I think that's as much planning as they could do and expect a good result because it would give them some room to move, but they might be able to make some reasonable conclusions about like if you know it's going to rain, some things at an amusement park are not practical to do, and it's okay to plan for that. Um, and so, but like when I
So
went to
it's
an
like
amusement
knowing
park.
when to plan and when not,
Yeah, or just knowing that so part
and
of
when not
the
to overplan.
yeah part of the army doctrine on planning was born from a guy called Helmuth von Moltke the Elder. He was a Prussian general. This is back when there was a Prussia. He actually led the Prussian military that precipitated the unification of Germany into the German Empire under the Kaiser. Um, which is to say, he had a planning method that was successful because by leading
Well, they
the
didn't win.
I'm talking about the this is the 19th century. So the German Empire, during its start under the Prussian leadership, did win. They
Oh,
fought, yeah,
before
yeah,
World War One.
yeah. So I'm talking like in the 1870s, basically, is when most of
Oh,
this happened.
well, maybe that's why they didn't win.
Yeah, so
He was
there were three wars that they fought. There was the Austro-Prussian War, the Danish War, and then there was the Franco-Prussian War. And winning all of those basically directly contributed to Prussia's dominance of Germany and the formation of the German Empire under the Prussian monarchy, in which the Prussian king became the Kaiser of all Germany. And his framework for planning, which has since been adopted as the military doctrine for the U.S. military, was essentially born from the realization, like looking into the 19th century, because this is right around the time that um, some of this was from my own personal study, but I don't know if you missed the some of the earlier details, African. But I was an Army ROTC cadet in college, so some of what they imparted to me, some of it just my own additional reading about military history. Um, and so, anyway, the 19th century is that the century that the Industrial Revolution kicks off. And so, because of a lot of advancements in science and agriculture, populations start to grow. And so, the scale of war becomes a lot larger. And it got to the point that when von Moltke the Elder is commanding the Prussian and German military forces, he realizes that like we're not fighting the old school battles that are everything I read in military history is where the commander of the army is there on the field with his whole army. We're having armies that span multiple fields across entire fronts. I can't see everything at once. Um, I won't get the information at the same flow and rate of rate of like update at once because I'm going to find out what's happening in the town next to me before I'm finding out what's happening on the other side of the country. That's how big this is. And so he realized, okay, what I need to do is I need to have what my plan needs to have enough gaps so that I'm not constrained to anything, but also I give room for my subordinate commanders um, to be able to be creative with what happens, to sort of roll with whatever goes there. And they just need to know what the central idea of what I'm trying to do is, and I need to figure out a way to communicate that to them. And so it was this hybrid between, or sort of bridging the gap between order and chaos in that planning process.
But how much is planning for war transferable to living your everyday life too? Because it seems like a very specific context with its own conditions.
So one good example that I started, implementing is like I began to realize that if I'm going to travel someplace and it's not very close to where I live, I need to give myself a reasonable buffer of time for something to go wrong on the way there. So if there's
Yeah,
like a
I do
car
that on
wreck,
my bus trips.
right? So there could be a car wreck that blocks up the interstate. The parking could be terrible when I get there. I might not be able to find a spot, and then if I could be basically on time, but I might have to park somewhere that like it's a 15-minute walk to where the place is, right? And so that becomes part of my commute at that point. I need to
So
plan for that.
imagine if you had done that in Minecraft, because you were on this little car, this little train.
Well, it's interesting because I probably, if one thing had gone according to plan, I probably would have never left that town in the first place. That I would have had to come back and then run into the situation. But um, um, I think for this, it wasn't so much like a timeliness thing or whatever. Um, but the way I looked at it as the extractable lesson was like it's a densely populated area with a lot of player activity, and so the more that you're likely to come across other players, the more likely you are to collide with them, and then that can go badly. And so the question is, how many collisions with strangers in a game where they're not held accountable as much as they are in real life, right? If they want to act up and escalate, it's much easier for them to do that than in real life. Um, how many of those would I want to do, and how much would I want to take that into account? So I think the lesson there is that like I can um, choose ways that maybe would minimize that, or if I'm going to travel to a place. So like one thing I started to do is that I would take my horse if I were in that suburb going into the main city. There's a rail line that connects the two. In fact, this is the rail line where it happened. No, I'm not at home. I'm at a coffee shop. Um, and um, but since other people use it, you're more likely to run into them. Whereas sometimes I would just take a horse. And if you have a horse, you can just go any direction you want. It's a lot less constraining. You get more flexibility, but people can't be in your way, right? So, you know, um, I could have, for example, just figured out a way to make that more the dominant way of travel as well. Um, so like
So I think it's like degree of planning and
Mhm.
knowing what degree of planner you are as an individual. Some people are over planners. I'm not a planner at all. Every time I try to make a plan, I can never make it match up to reality at all. So I gave up planning a long time ago, and it's easier for me to just show up and be open to whatever happens and adjust to each stimulus as it comes my way. But some people like to plan and can plan more or less effectively to where their plan they know how to plan where it's useful and it works most of the time. So I guess it's like what level of planning, when does it become pathological and OCD and counterproductive? When is it a reasonable level of planning and having contingency plans, like having flexible open plans, and then when to just roll with the chaos
Yeah.
and learn to react in the moment. And
Hmm.
so there's different levels of there's I guess different levels of approach to how we organize our experience and our
Yeah.
expectations we have of that.
Yeah.
I
And
don't take prep. Go ahead.
yeah. So it I think it's a tricky thing because it's like you're basically we're sort of asking like what is the right balance?
What is our goal? What is your goal?
Yeah.
First, if you don't have a goal at all, if you're aimlessly wandering around, everything's chaos. So what is your goal and how much planning is reasonably required for that goal?
Yeah. And some goals might require um, more levels of planning than others.
Yeah.
And but even then, no plan can be so rigid that it can't respond to changes because it's just um, like like if the plan falls apart because rain clouds show up or you catch a cold the day before and then that's it, then like these things will inevitably happen. It's probably not a good plan if those little setbacks completely derail whatever was happening, to the point that it can't be salvaged. um, so there has to be stuff in place like that. Now I would also say that I think a big part of why this failed isn't just a lack of planning on my own part, but a lack of planning on the, like you were basically saying, these are signs that it's a dysfunctional system. Uh,
I was.
yeah, like in the last stream, not this time, but talking about like the me noticing things were odd.
Oh, the
And,
community. Yeah, the way
yeah,
they
yeah.
handled what
So
yeah.
for example, right, like that rail system's been around a long time. They have to know that something like that would eventually occur, right? If they have such like if they had a pre-existing expectation like that, then they had to know that something like that was going to occur. In which case, why they could have planned um, um, the way they want to do their infrastructure so that it's harder for those things to happen. And well, they didn't. And there's other things too. It's like, for example, this is actually something I realized today. I know in some ways, because then like part of what made me realize it is like I try to realize, well, what if I were them? How would I be looking at the situation? So when I've been in charge of things and I've sort of delegated authority to folks, so these are people I'm giving some authority. They're subordinate to me in whatever the organizational hierarchy is, but I'm trusting them to make good decisions, right? If they do something that just leads to a problem, um, I don't think, oh, this person's stupid and incompetent, or at least I don't. If even if they give me lots of reason to think that, I will at least still think simultaneously, what expectations and preparations did I, as the person at the top of the organization, or at least above them in it, set that this might have also been caused, or this could have been easily preventable if I had just done this. And if nothing else, it might help remedy the situation if I realize that. It might help me, not overreact, but it also might help me prevent it from ever happening again, or at least reduce it to near zero. And um, so fact, my situation, it wasn't just like what actually happened in the game, but then an hour later, um, I get a notification on Discord and I'm being publicly accused of murder. And I immediately respond to sort of dismiss that and essentially just defend my name, which isn't that unusual for me to do. And it would be, in fact, it'd be very strange to think that I would just sit there, not respond at all, and think that's a good idea or that would benefit me. Um, and so the question is, what could have made me do that? Because obviously, um, the leaders feel like I shouldn't have done that, and that I somehow should have known better not to do that. But then I imagine myself, well, what if I'm in their shoes and someone who's like, again, on a lower level of an organizational structure, but still has some authority and responsibility, is doing something that I think is unwise? Well, I know, for example, that they have talked extensively about how they don't like having a legal system. They don't like what they call e-lawyering in the game because they think it's annoying. The thing is, if you don't have a legal system, and I know that there's not a legal system, and there's essentially nothing for me to defend myself, I have no mechanism I can flip to say, oh, you know what, I'm not going to address this publicly. I'm going to get my defense. Of course, I'm going to respond publicly because the system is set up so that there's no other alternative but for me to just kind of react and improvise. And if they wanted me to do something besides that, they would have designed such a system. In which case, it's a failure of planning on their part just because they don't like it. They essentially make the response that they hate a good idea, right? And so part of what I'm saying is like it is teaching me a bit about planning, but more so from their perspective and what they could have done rather than what I could do. And then also making me realize gradually that like anything I try to do to remedy this is probably not likely to go well. And if I have a plan of trying to remedy it on terms that will please them, they've shown a lot of signs that probably not going to go that way, even if I do everything I can to make it easy for them. And so, yeah, those are the things I'm noticing. And I think sometimes also is even if you do strike the right balance between order and chaos in your planning process, both before and then in the moment, you can still be unlucky. And I think that's just a big part of what happened is I was unlucky. It was a weird thing. I don't know if
But
you,
but their system was not very
yeah,
resilient. If it just took that one little amount of unluck
I,
to
I, I agree. I agree. It's just, and part of me is thinking like, as this has just continued to as it transpired the way it did and it's continued to hang in the air, like what if an actual crisis had happened?
right.
Um, um, it's just, it could have shattered the whole thing. And part of one way that I, I, I think that they're not used to this is by being a neutral nation and having neutral relationships across the world. They have insulated themselves from a lot of unpredictable things. You could almost say it's the same fundamental problem that I've had. And so they too were completely caught off guard when something not that unusual, like when you think about it, how unusual is it that you have these rail lines and it's just a single track, so you have to use the same track to go both ways, that there would be some sort of jam that leads to
That's the
um,
first thing I would have thought of.
players
Like
getting in conflict,
how do you
right?
have a road with one lane? Like how do the
Because
cars
it's easy, it's much easier to build because Minecraft everything's in blocks.
I
So like,
know, but like that's the first thing a 3-year-old child would think of. Well, what do you do if two cars are coming in the opposite direction?
yeah, I agree. I agree. And if the cards collide, it's not dangerous. But in this case, it's like, well, this is also something that it's very common for people to get in their cart, hit the button, it sends their cart going, and then maybe they will get up to go do something and they'll be AFK. That's a very common thing. I've been AFK on a minecart, but usually it's been something where it's a very long trip, and so I know I won't be stuck in one place. And again, it's only for maybe like 2 or 3 minutes. I think the one time I um, uh, I risked a long departure was when it was a track that I knew would be like a 20-minute ride, just letting my laptop sit, and I went to go take a shower while I did it. But I already knew it would be that long. It was also a line that was not frequently used between the 2 points, whereas this other line was much more frequently used. I think it's like a 45-second line. It does not take long to travel. So people are always coming in and out between it. And there's no reason to think that like you could just go away for long from when you start and like you can't just sit there for 10 minutes because you will be blocking a very busy thing for 10 minutes. When I got back from my shower that one time, my cart was still rolling. I had
Yeah,
not
I don't
gotten.
understand why the attention was not on this guy.
Yeah,
He seemed the source of the problem, not you.
especially because he instigated it in public by making an accusation rather than like and one that was
Right, because
false.
that's probably his guilt.
And, and so there's been no ownership of that either. And again, it's like, so they don't have a structure. So it's the two sides of it. One is like there's no structure for legal remedy because they don't like e-lawyering. Well, then people just make us stink in public, and then I have to respond to that in public. And I know that I can't do anything else because you told me you don't like e-lawyering. So what else is there to do except dismiss the accusation? And be very firm about it. Be like, So and then the firmness comes off as mean. It's just so it's like there's a lot that was set up there, and that's a bad system if a 5% random event, which is what happened, right, is all that it takes to derail that, right? Like it's
Yeah, I
like if
think
I'm not,
yeah.
it'd be one thing if
It's
I
not a system. It's not so much the system. It's the individuals involved. I just think are not
yeah
as functional or healthy, or they don't have coping skills or experience, whatever reason. It's the individuals in the system. It's the people in the system.
right and it'd be, if someone's generally a malicious person, you don't need random events for something to go wrong eventually. They will find a way to do that. But if the difference between, me, will say making a mistake, and I know that you're like, it's not a mistake, but just bear with me, Jeff, right? If the difference between me making a mistake and not is just a 5% random event, then you would hope that the people in charge of that system realize, oh, I mean, this is just a random event. If you were really bad, then you probably would have done something by now.
I still don't think it's a mistake. It's only a mistake if you use their dysfunctional framing of things. And I don't know why you would capitulate to that. When you were talking about like finding ways to expose yourself to more chaos, the first thing that came to my mind was the panelverse. Like, because
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a better way to desensitize yourself to chaos than YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find does that help at all? Like being in the panelverse?
Um, well, um, in some ways now, like I've looked at other channels and they tend to be so chaotic that I can't even tell what is happening. So,
Right,
like,
those would be good ones to,
well,
to get your feet like to start getting
but
adjusted to chaos, like to learn chaos from these panels.
I mean, I guess in some ways I am learning, but like it's like I'm learning from other people's mistakes. And so, for example, Kane, right? Kane's Catharsis, his channel. I like Kane. Um, all my experiences with him have been pleasant, and um, um, I think he's a good guy. Um, but I remember around because like I think around the time I started getting acquainted with you and your channel, he'd been going maybe a month and a half, and he'd been going a while now. He's been accumulating
And then he
followers, and
started fucking with the drama.
yeah, so he started getting into the drama, and I can tell that he is displeased with the way people treat about things. But I just noticed more and more that he was just kind of having interesting conversations, and almost every time I check into his channel, he's like he's parrying um, drama blows that are thrown at him, and I'm guessing most of these are unfair. But to me, it's just sort of like, well, he has an easy solution to that. He can just ignore these people and just not indulge in them. But he'll do a panel. He's like, "Can you believe they said that they said this?" And if he wants to respond to it, he can. But it's just sort of like it's a thing I've noticed that feeds into a cycle.
Yeah.
And and then you might wonder, how chaotic is this? Because to me, this is all very foreseeable. And I will say, like your case, while it's not very, yours is a lot freer of drama. In some ways, it's more chaotic because I don't have, I can expect that not much drama will happen here, but I really don't know what kind of conversations I'm going to have a
Yeah.
lot.
The conversations are unpredictable.
And so they can go in
That's
interesting
one thing I like
directions.
about it.
If there's one thing I predicted, it's that people will kind of come on and go on to like they'll do their sort of soapbox boxing or something. Um, and again, I kind of talked about it before, like in the context of stocks, it's like, I hate the Federal Reserve. I hate Nancy Pelosi's portfolio trades. And that's when my mind just goes like, okay, I'm out. But I just got good at recognizing that. Uh,
I'm gonna open it soon. We have one more little thing to touch on.
yeah, and I see Kane's here. Hey, Kane. Yeah, so she knows because she's very engaged with Kane's channel. And Kane, I think you know kind of what I'm talking about. It's like there's definitely this sort of error that Kane's channel had
Oh,
that I
I've
know.
noticed it too. It siphoned off all the drama from this channel, which I was grateful for.
Yeah, there's that. It's sort of like when Trump sent all the criminal illegals back to Colombia,
Yeah.
and they made them do it, and that's it's not a good deal for Colombia. But then it's like obviously Trump pulled. What was amazing to me about that, and this is Trump responding to chaos, is he's like, because the Colombian president said no, we're not taking these jets full of criminals.
Was it their people? It was migrants from Colombia?
They were Colombians, yeah, they were
Oh.
Colombians, and they were being deported back to their country. They were there
Because they were
legally.
here illegally, like they weren't
Yeah,
even supposed to be here. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Whether they snuck in or they let their visas
These
expire.
are your people. Take them
Yeah,
back.
yeah, and he was trying to refuse. Now imagine that, refusing entry to your own people. Um, and so Trump said, okay, we're gonna slap a ban on all your visas. We're not gonna let, like, basically there's gonna be like almost no legal immigration from Colombia. So all the people, all your Colombians who want to come here legally, you're screwing them over with this decision. We're gonna slap a 50% tariff on everything that comes from Colombia. Like, you're gonna nuke your whole relationship, your ability to function with the U.S. over this. And the Colombian president backed down, and he took the illegal immigrants, and he did it on Colombia's bill. And Trump responded to chaos. And what's interesting to me is, like, I thought about that. I'm like, you know what? No Democratic president would have done that. They would have just said, "Oh gosh, I guess we just have to do what the Colombian president says, even though it's not fair to us." And they would have just, but Trump. If there's anyone who has a good relationship with chaos, it is Trump.
Hmm.
Even if he doesn't make perfect decisions, he he's maintained some control over his situation and is able to solve his individual problem. Like, that's the extent that this is his own path in life. And it's his
Well,
unique
he
ability.
knows what he wants. His goal is to get his way, and he doesn't let anything stop him from getting his way. So whatever obstacle you throw in the path, he's going to find some way around it because he is
Yeah,
going to get his way.
and it's interesting because even though when you listen to him talk sometimes he can waffle a bit, his mind seems to wander. There just seems to be something. There's this central component of Trump that is never lost, and he always sticks to that, and he lets that guide how he gets through a situation. And he's unshakable in that. He was unshakable even when he got shot. Um, right? Like, he kept the sense of, like, this is what I need to do. This is what I'm here for. And he leveraged it into an opportunity, right? It was like, that's what I was like, the pictures of him like this, right? Like that, I saw that. I'm like, that's going to put him back in
That's
the
when I
White House.
started to shift. That was the big moment.
That was a turning point for me too, because it just stood out to me. Not only that,
And the
he could
fry
actually,
station,
because
which he
pretty
was very
much,
shakeable there. He was overshaking.
um, the fries were interesting. But what was interesting about that to me is, like, up to that point, I basically, even though he's an old man, a lot of my image of Trump was that he's a spoiled rich kid, and if he ever is faced with real pressure, he will crack. And the thing is, he was faced with a very unique test, a difficult one, and he did not crack under it. And I thought, that says something about him. And, like, we never really had a chance to see him like that,
That's true. Yeah.
right? And so it's like, and I can't unlearn that at that point. And so we're now seeing the guy who took a bullet and just, brushed himself off. This is the guy who forced the Colombian president to take their people back. And it was something that made me realize, there's something different here. And also just him getting up, like, there's something that I didn't realize would probably you would want to see in a presidential candidate, whatever your country, and whatever their politics is. Like, there was a zest for life, his own life, in that, right? And it's just, you know what I'm talking about. It's like, I feel like it would be um, difficult to lead a country and not be happy to be alive and on this earth and continue to be a part of it. And I saw that in him. And there's nothing, maybe this is a lot of feelings and vibe stuff, even, which we normally say is kind of a problem, but can you
No,
think of any?
I don't. It's only a problem because I don't pick up on it. But
Yeah,
the fist thing definitely was vibes. The fry station was vibes, but they were vibes that worked on me.
yeah. And so it was very, very strange to see. Um, and, um, and I think a lot of Americans noticed that, and that helped them in the end. And so,
Okay, we wanted to clarify this masking term that keeps coming up between us, and then I'll open up the panel.
oh
Because I
yeah,
made the comment when you confronted the guy at the coffee shop that day, at least you didn't mask. You gave him exactly what was on your mind.
yeah. But it was also, I think, interesting is that uh, I didn't really have this angry confrontational response with him, right? So, like, he was, a lot of people, if confronted like that, would have um, probably been a bit harsher with him. And To me, I just sort of looked at him, and here's the thing: is like I acknowledged him. He said, "You're talking about this." I said, "Yep." You know, like I was, I had a very subdued response, but I still acknowledged and engaged him. Um, and then, he said, "Well, why are you doing this?" I said, "It's a public place," and he had no answer to that. And headphone back on. We get back to our thing. Um, you even asked me about it, and I just do the, don't worry about it, and I don't let it be a thing after that. And um, to me, I don't think that was too unusual for me. Um, but I feel like in that case, right? What we talk about masking is I don't actively volunteer information about what I'm thinking or feeling um, during an interaction. But in this case, I was asked, or maybe even more directly confronted about it, and asked to give an answer. And so when asked for an answer, I gave an honest response. I let him know exactly what I was thinking. I did not ham it up. I did not over dramatize it. I distilled it down to the simple information. Um, and it worked out for me in that case. And I
So
didn't let
maybe
the
that's what masking is, not voluntarily offering your thoughts or feelings.
well, yeah. So, and we talked before about like when is a mask deceptive versus when is it just you don't know everything? Because to me, deception is you are trying to plant a false idea in somebody's head to
Oh,
lead
to
them
me,
to
it's
it.
just withholding, like letting people think that the surface is what is reality when there's all this other stuff beneath the surface that you're keeping from them.
Yeah.
So I
So
guess I have a broader definition of deception than you do. It doesn't necessarily have to be an intent to manipulate in any way. It's just withholding, not
yeah,
showing all your cards.
yeah. So to me, like when I think about a mask, right? Like let's work with this metaphor because I think the visuals will be helpful, right? You can have a mask that is not expressive. All it does is conceal your face. Like I could have like a ninja mask
No,
on,
it
right?
doesn't just conceal your face. It conceals your thoughts and your feelings.
Let's talk about the physical one for a moment, and then we'll
Okay.
we'll bridge the gap for how that is more conceptual, right? Because I feel like it still helps. So I could have like a ninja mask, right? So some sort of black cloth, and there's just like a slit for my eyes, right? That's very not indicative, right? It's just not just who I am, but then of course my facial expressions are masked. Um, and so it's there's nothing implied by the ninja mask other than I'm just trying to cover my face. Um, I guess if I were dressed like a ninja as well, in addition to the mask, it might suggest I'm trying to kill somebody, but um, like in a real life ninja context. But uh, I could also wear a mask. Like I could wear this very fancy prosthetic mask that maybe tries to make me look happy or something, right? I could wear masks that try to suggest things I don't actually feel. Um, right? Like like I could uh, dress up as a clown, maybe even a happy clown, right? But inside, I might actually be a sad clown. I might be having a bad day. Um, and so, the clown, to the extent that the makeup is a form of mask, right? Like that's it's presenting a false impression, and it's different than the ninja thing, which is it's just simple concealment, and it's not trying to plant any conclusions in your head. The only
Yeah, I
conclusion
think
is
the concealment alone is masking.
well, I don't. Yeah, so that's masking, but is it deceptive, right? That's the thing. So conceal.
Well, to me, it is. It's giving me a false impression of it's. I'm not getting the whole picture of what's going on with
Well,
you. I'm getting a.
is
I'm walking away with a incomplete impression of reality.
well, so incomplete. I don't is different than inaccurate, right? It's like if I'm thinking of
Yeah,
a
but
number.
it's still. If reality is this, and the picture I'm walking away is not that, there's some kind of misleading
Well,
involved.
so I want to challenge this, Jeff, because I run into this as like an actual accusation of dishonesty a lot when I write for Seeking Alpha, um, and not in any serious way that I'm worried about it, but I'll write an article, um, and you have to have it condensed enough that you can articulate a thesis so that people can read it and not lose their train of thought. Right? You have to write it for readers' attention spans. Um, and then of course you have to focus on like basically I can't discuss every nook and cranny of the company, right? I can't talk about what's in between the floorboards of every office and production facility, right? And you could always say, "Oh, you didn't talk about this. You left out this detail," and you could just beat that to death. And so a common thing is like, the, people will say it's like curious how you chose to omit or you neglected to say this, and as if I'm trying to deceive people. And sometimes, like it just didn't even occur to me, or um, or maybe I knew about that fact, but I don't. I thought about that, and then I just thought I don't know how. I can't think of how communicating it really develops or fleshes out the thesis better, or
But yeah, that's different than because you're selecting from an overwhelming amount of information. That's not
okay,
the
yes,
same thing that's happening when you're having a thought or a feeling that you're declining to share.
I think it is. I think it is. I
It's
think it
not.
is.
It's not like you're having 1,000 thoughts and you're sharing some of them. You're having a thought that you're choosing not to share, or a feeling or reaction that you're choosing not. That's a single piece of information that you're withholding. So their argument that you're telling some things but not others is different than you're not telling that one thing at all that you could share in the moment because it's a single piece of
But
information.
the thing is, um,
Because your
some,
reason for not the reason for not sharing all the seeking alpha stuff is it's too much information and you're editing it down for the article for
right.
concision and readability. That is not an argument you can use when you have a single thought or a single reaction.
So it's I don't have. But the thing is, I don't just have a single thought, right? Like at least not every instance. In most instances, that's not it, right? So I think in that case, it's for me, it's like I don't necessarily know how I'm going to help people understand something by just constantly spray hosing information on them.
But
Um,
that's not what we're talking about.
well, it kind of is.
We're talking about when you have a significant thought that you keep to yourself or a significant emotional reaction that you don't disclose. We're just
Yeah.
talking about like a very small piece of information. I wouldn't
Well,
call it a fire hose.
okay. Well, even then, it's I don't know that I'm. Every situation is one where one I have those, and then two, even if I do have them, like the people involved are they the people to tell?
Right, that's
Um,
my point. When you do have them, you hold them back. So the times when you do have them, and a lot of people would disclose them, you keep them to yourself, and that's what I call masking.
uh, I guess I don't know of a situation where that's occurred.
Well, I was going off your own description because when you were talking about the coffee shop guy, he talked about you use the word thoughts and feelings and how you don't disclose every thought and feeling. And so I'm like, that's the kind of stuff that's being masked is when you're having a thought or a feeling. But I was
Right.
going off of your description of what you were doing and what you were
Yeah.
calling it.
But like, and I don't impulsively just um, do this. And some of it is just because, like, again, over time, my feelings actually do change um, to the point that I'm not as reactive. Um, and then
But then they miss out on what the initial reaction was. But
all right, but then the thing is, I'm going off of the feedback I've been given, right? So I have confused people more often than I have enlightened them about what I'm thinking or feeling by just
that's what I'm
going with
confused
impulsive.
about because I'm less confused when you share than when you. I'm more confused when you hold back and I find out about it later than I am in the moment, the rare moments where I do get to see that reaction.
But you're living in a world in which it's budgeted, right? How much like I'm just having absolutely no self restraint, right? And I feel like if you lived in a world where that wasn't the case, you might give a different response because most people do. No, you're Jeff. You're not everybody else, so maybe you still wouldn't. But um, that's the point I'm making. Is like the feedback I've gotten in my adult life is that people do not respond well to that, and that in many ways completely derails anything productive from happening, and that I need to have a strategy of like, well, what do I want to do about that?
And
Um,
masking is the strategy.
right, and it's the same thing as like concealment, right? Like this is the thing they teach us in the army is Concealment is an important part of just navigating
Right.
military
Okay.
security.
Yes. Camouflage. So you're camouflaging yourself when you're interacting socially, and I don't know how people get to know you if you're sitting there camouflaged the whole time. That's the point. Like forming relationships and getting to know people is breaking through that camouflage to what's been underneath it. And if you keep that from us, we don't ever get to know what's past the camouflage.
I, again, I feel like people still don't get to know that because there's a chance for. So I risk um, firing off signals that are more likely to be misinterpreted than accurately interpreted.
I
And
challenge that, but
I mean, if that weren't the case, my life would have been very different. I'd have a better career and more money
well,
right now. It's just,
I'm talking about what I see here on YouTube and in this community because this is the
yeah,
main
you,
context in which I know you.
you're seeing me on the other side of things, right? So it's like um, I I think I've gotten better at indicating um like determining when is the right time to like be more open about something with people who are likely to respond well or take it well. So I've gotten sensitive to that. In other words, um, I've got better at sort of figuring out like what makes a person actually empathetic, right? Like, is this a person who's actually good at being able to put themselves in your shoes, even if that's not how they themselves normally feel emotionally? Some people can do that. Some people are very bad at it. Some people can only think about things in the way that they feel emotions.
Why don't you let all you have to do is share and let them take care of that on their end.
Because if I do that, the point I've made before is that people will escalate things. So it's not just it's a bad experience, but
But I haven't
the
I
beams
don't
of
know if that would
support in my
happen
life,
here.
maybe not here, but the thing is, it's habit development, right? It's habit refinement. It's
Okay,
leading by example.
fair enough. But like if I know someone's camouflaging, I'm going to be less invested in it because I can't tell the difference. I'm just gonna assume the default is camouflage, and I'm not gonna waste a lot of time trying to penetrate it if I know that they're just gonna maintain their camouflage.
But I think another thing too, Jeff, is that I don't like to blur a message. So you can say something, but
So
if
you don't
people
give
feel
one
like
at all.
no, no,
There's
no,
no message is preferable to a blurred message.
yeah, um, so you could basically give people the explicit information. You can say the words, "This is what I think and feel," but some people will be less likely to believe it if they feel like the emotion that you have in the moment is incongruent with the
But
information that you're saying.
you're
Right?
trying to control something you can't control. That's their end of it.
So I can't control everything they
If you
do.
give what's authentically happening on your end, the on their end, many different possibilities could happen, and it'll vary from person to person. But you can't control. Like it's like you only want to disclose if you can guarantee or engineer a certain response or interpretation on their part first, and that's just not realistic.
So I think in many ways it is because basically if I want to communicate
It's
information
not,
of
and it's manipulative.
no, I don't think it is because if I know
Like
that
I'm
I'm
only
not
going to share if I can be assured first that you're going to have to give me the reaction that I'm looking for before I share.
so like I think if I want to communicate like that something is just dry information that there's not any beef or that things aren't about to get worse, um having the emotional temperament that reflects it like hey I'm cool like I could be like sort of still huffing and being like you know what I'm cool about it I'm not going to make an issue out of this but if I sound like I'm disturbed
Yeah,
people
that
might not
Joe.
believe
That's the
that
Joe I want to see.
right but if I sit with him and like you know what go with it I'm not going to make an issue with this so it matches what I'm trying to say more it's like and to me it's like
Not for
things
me though.
okay
The
well
first
I,
version communicated more to me than the second version.
so the vast majority of my interactions is that I lose people when there's that incongruity between what I say and then the other cues, and they go with the feelings and vibes rather than the explicit information. And so,
Oh
you know,
yeah, that
I
happens with me too.
right, and so I have to go with what works with most people, and even though some people are a bit different, a lot of people will still kind of tend to lean toward looking at things that way as well. And so, um, essentially, it's like if I want people to listen to me better, one thing that I could do is like not try to put them into a fight or flight response, which is easier to trigger in some people than others. And yeah, I can't control every single time whether or not some that happens with someone. But if I'm just thinking it over a course of interactions, a series of interactions, I know it's more likely to lead a certain way than not because I've lived through enough of them and I've tried it out. And the challenge is how do I be authentic with um, exercise restraint, but not so much that I become a liar. And that's not easy to do, but I do think it is doable, and I do think that I do that.
Just be authentic, and who cares if you put someone in a fight or flight?
So I told you, I care. People in fight or flight will go to war with you, and they will kick the beams of support from under your life. Like
Well,
that's what
no, not
happened.
only if you let them. They could try to do all that, but
I mean, I lost a job because of stuff like this. So
well,
people,
yeah, I know. I have to actually. So
right? And if I
there.
hadn't, and if I had,
I still think it was the better option. I still think keeping the job was not worth the price of not being able to be myself.
um, but I agree that it was not sustainable. But like, um, I managed to avoid conflict. And here's the thing too: if I trigger conflict, then I'm also more likely to be in a reactive state myself, and I'm more likely to escalate, and I'm more likely to do things that I regret. That I look back and I think, well, you were just mean, Joe. Um, um, so there's that too. But um, I was able to basically do what I was feeling a very honest life, and being productive and pulling my weight, and I did it long enough that I could make money, and inevitably, like if I was just in a dysfunctional system, which I was, like there was a reason that job, and it also changed over time. So it's like it wasn't immediately obvious when I started there because the workplace culture changed, you know, gradually from the day I got there, and it had been changing gradually even before then. I learned from other folks, um, and so I basically did something where I avoided having needless confrontation. Um, Managed to do a good day's work every time I went in. Um, and then when the system changed sufficiently that was no longer sustainable, it reached that ending point. But it wasn't because of anything that I provoked at that point. It reached its natural end, and I maximized what reward I could get out of it by being my best. And um, and successfully doing that got me to the point where I am now, where I have a lot more stability and freedom. Like I can come into a coffee shop and hang out in the middle of the day, and I don't have to worry about being late to anything. And there's simply more I wish I could have done, or I could have attained in that time. But here we are. So
Here we are.
um,
And I opened up the panel. So Hank, Barney, anybody else, if y'all want to come up
I'm
and do
trying
your
to catch
thing.
up
Hank, I
on
would love to hear about chaos.
um, some of the comments because I was so
And I
focused
need
on
to
what
go
you
grab
said.
some more coffee and pee real quick. So I'm gonna leave it with you. Maybe you can just read through comments and
Yeah, looking
address
through
them.
them. So Hank said, "Nobody can prove what thoughts I am thinking, though. Can you count your own thoughts, Jeff? What is the definition of significant?" Hank, if you're still there, if you want to explain more, like what was the part where I said significant? Um, Maybe it was when Jeff said I had a significant thought. Okay. Um, um, Zeph said, you said, yeah, vulnerability is challenging, but it's a superpower. I mean, I think the nature of vulnerability is that it's not a superpower, because vulnerable literally means woundable. So if I'm making it so I can get hurt, I don't think that's an advantage. Um, and so um, there are far more people who will take advantage of it than will respect it. Like they'll go, oh, he's being vulnerable, let me respect him. That's just not what happens. Even people who say, oh, we want someone who can be vulnerable, the people who say that will take advantage of your vulnerability. I'm not saying that's you, but like just a lot of people who do that. And you don't find out which ones are serious about it and not until the problem happens. Let me look at some of the comments. Oh, and Steph said she was going to go catch some snowflakes on her tongue. She isn't even here. Hear me say that. And I guess I gotta wait for people to come back. I don't know who's actually still in chat.
Okay. Oh, cool, Zephyr.
Okay.
That's what someone told me to do during my first snowfall, is to be sure and catch a snowflake on my tongue. And I
Okay,
did.
she did hear me. I wasn't sure if she heard because I was responding to some of what she said, but then I saw she was going to catch snowflakes on her tongue, so I stopped for a bit there. Um, so yeah. But one thing she had mentioned was I don't know if you'd already highlighted this comment when she said it about 10 minutes ago. She said, vulnerability is challenging, but it's a superpower. And I basically said, like,
It can be. Talk about risk management. There's risk in it.
what, and what I pointed out to her is that, like, a lot of people say that. They say that a lot. You just, how many interviews or podcasts or just seminars or whatever have I, seen the speaker or speakers say it's important to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to be vulnerable. And then everyone in the room nods and says, yeah. But when people are vulnerable, how many of these people actually respect the vulnerability
Right.
versus take
Especially
advantage?
with men.
Which I mean, yeah, yeah. And so, um,
You got to
um,
be. I'd say vulnerability. It's a calculated vulnerability because you don't want to be vulnerable with the wrong person or the wrong people. There's
right, and
definitely more of a cost to that than any kind of payoff.
right, and the word vulnerable literally means woundable, and then maybe that's not what people always have in mind when they say it, but like there's a reason that the word woundable got is being used for this more social science concept, I guess you could say, and because it's still related, and it's like who wants to be woundable, right? Like that's I think most people, if you put it in that term, you should be woundable. People will be like, oh, that sounds like a bad way to live life. It sounds like how you die very very young, and um, I think the issue is when people say, oh, it's important to be vulnerable. You don't really know the people who are sincere about that and will respect it until the problem happens, right? Until you're in a stressful situation and characters are tested.
Right. It's a risk every time.
And now you can look at clues for folks who are like that, and uh, that can help. And sometimes you just might need to wait until you've gotten enough clues because you may not get them very quickly. Um, you may have this is basically why like a lot of people wait years before they get to know someone before they will tell them certain things, right? Or act a certain way around them. And a lot of the concept of what is polite and impolite is really like when
What
do you
what
open up?
happens for years? Like what? How do you go years without? Because vulnerability is also what takes the relationship to the next level, the next layer of depth. And so, what kind of holding pattern are they in for years until that happens? Like, I'm not. There's nothing I'm going to want to know about the person if I have to wait years to find it out.
I guess it depends on because I'm talking about like a wide variety of cultural, interpersonal relationships. There are some I think could take years. Some, maybe you only have to wait a few months. Um, but Hank, welcome.
Yeah, I can contradict Jeff's notion
Ooh,
some.
Lord, you sound like a football stadium.
Yes, I can throw the gain down some. I have hardware gain controls now since I just replaced my microphone.
Now you're
How's
coming in a little low. Maybe
let me
somewhere
scroll.
in the middle.
How's this?
Let me check here. You turn all the way up here.
I I'll turn it down. Software down to
I think lower than you had it initially, but higher
mic,
than it is now.
mic check. How's this?
They're saying it's a reverb.
I'll turn the echo down then.
Okay.
Okay, mic check. How's this?
I can turn echo cancellation on too.
All right, how's this?
Oh, a lot better. Yeah. I was hoping a Discordian would come up to give us their perspective on chaos.
Okay, so what do you mean by chaos?
The unpredictable, spontaneous randomness of life that you can't always plan for.
Oh, okay. Well, you plan for what you can plan for, and don't waste resources planning for stuff you can't plan for.
Right. That's kind of what we determine, and it's the degree of planning. And what do you do when your plans don't work?
I stop using them and try to come up with new plans on the spot.
That's what some people are not good at. So if once their plan breaks down, they're like powerless in that moment.
Yeah, I usually bring extra stuff to use so I can do a new thing on the spot.
Like what kind of extra stuff?
Um, pens, pencils, markers, duct tape.
Actual stuff. Okay.
Yes, actual stuff.
Because you spend a lot of time in the Panelverse, which is a pretty chaotic environment, and you seem to have comfortably navigated your way around it.
Yes. I mean, I spent like 5 years as system administrator and 5 years as a logistician. I'm trained to be able to handle disorderly environments. And I still try to pay the money back to it, even though I'm not getting any good advice on how to do so.
What's
So
your secret? Do you just
lots
like
of
learn the
training,
patterns pretty quickly?
lots of training. I don't. I need to go back and see if I can measure how fast my pattern recognition is. So I can't say if I learned the patterns quickly, but I can say I did learn them.
Hmm.
But I need to actually check my pattern recognition to see how measure it. So I can't say if I do it fast or slow, but I do it at all, which I can't say is much for some people who are stuck in loops.
And you're not thrown by chaos. It seems like you have a certain tolerance for it that allows you to remain in chaotic environments while you're trying to learn these patterns.
Yeah. So a lot of times it's predictable, anyways. Once I get enough information to type your actions are generally predictable to me, anyways. So lots of stuff that surprise people would not surprise me.
Because you have you use typology as kind of a little heuristic to help you assess things
Yes.
like in the moment.
Yes. Then I use it, go back and use that project again to clarify if I can make better guesses later.
Yeah, that's it. So you have a way to kind of um like
Contextualize.
yeah, and it makes you have a way of like I guess reducing the unpredictability of people if you can sort them into these categories
Yes,
that you found correspondently useful.
exactly. Like for example, the chaos agent known as I call Officer Snafu Snaps. I figure out he's an INFJ, so I have a myriad of weaknesses I can pick at if you want to go against me. For example, he's an introvert, which means I will easily outlast him on the panel since I'm an extrovert right now. So
Oh, see, I'll talk him.
yes, I'll talk him.
Yeah, introverts are easy to you just blow their battery out.
Yep, and he'll leave on his own after he blows his battery out pretty quickly. And that's a power move for me because he's supposed to bulldoze people and scare them away, and then I say, well, that didn't work. Then and he has to leave. This shows it actually breaks down his philosophy, which is which runs the one who runs away loses. But you had to walk away because you ran out of power. But so
You ought to do like a series where you show the different ways to exploit the different types.
yeah,
Hacking people's typology.
yeah. But I need to go ahead and find examples because I don't think I've used um, down much with a bunch of different types. So I have ENTPs down. Yeah, I have ENFP, ENFJ, INFJ, and maybe INTJ. But that's about it.
Those are good stories. Are those the dominant types you find in the Panelverse?
Yes.
Lots of introverts.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Next month I'm gonna do another show with Benjamin. The first week of the month I'm gonna co-host again. So
Did you ever get your debate going with Talcott?
He just got back, so we had to schedule it again.
Okay.
So hopefully he trains for it, because if he doesn't, I'll just blow him out of the water.
Right. Yeah, I remember you kind of decided it might not be a fair match after all.
I knew it wasn't gonna be a fair match from the start. I hope that he believes in it enough that he'll actually train for it and do something unpredictable.
Wow. What what would be unpredictable about Jack?
I don't know yet. That's why it's unpredictable.
That's a good place to learn patterns.
Well, he went to train a little bit, so maybe he'll tell us something new today, Zephyr.
I was trying to explain to Joe earlier the Discordian perspective on order and chaos.
Oh, yeah, it's Discordian perspective is different, similar to the Dawa, Buddhist, Hindu perspective. Pretty much, the substrate is called chaos, and we're using our senses interpret order or disorder from it.
So disorder is different from chaos?
Yes, in the Discordian model, order is different from chaos. Chaos is a substrate, and you can derive order and disorder from it via a dialectic.
And those are the subjective perceptual categories, but chaos is just the phenomena of life outside of the mind. I see.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Or if you're an idealist, inside the mind of God.
Interesting. Yeah, it could be like in Joe's situation. If he had had more time, he could have probably found some kind of pattern that helped him through those 3 random events.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, if it were something that were known to occur more, I probably would have been more ready for it.
Yeah.
But it was a very novel situation. I had never encountered anything like that, and even though it's not a particularly bad life experience compared to really bad life experiences, it was still sort of the psychological impact of its chaotic nature was still profound in that way.
So maybe chaos is just the anomalies in the patterns, like our model breaks down because we're encountering like the scientific paradigms of like Thomas Kuhn's structure of scientific revolution, and when we encounter our patterns, we build models that we use to predict, and when we encounter new situations or information that don't match our current model, maybe we experience that as chaos, and then over time we can resolve that into our models and refine our models or replace them if we have to.
Well, there's a limit to modeling, so there's some stuff you can't model.
I think chaos is our limit.
Yes, chaos is our limit of our models, and we have we have disorder stuff that don't make sense to us, and order stuff that do make sense to us.
I don't know, Sean. I'm not familiar with chaos necessarily being evil, according to Christians.
And according to Christians, such as evil comes from God anyways. Isaiah 45:7, my favorite Bible verse.
Satan.
I need to go ahead and pull it up so I can quote it properly. That should be I should start reciting if I can memorize this. So, I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. All right, the Lord do all these things. That's my favorite Bible verse.
That's in Isaiah.
Yes, Isaiah 45:7.
There you go.
So from the Christian perspective, God did it.
Christian Satanism in a nutshell.
Yeah. So yeah, from the Christian perspective, God did evil. God did it.
Well, we have anything else from either one of you?
But yeah, you have to hold some things back because some people don't respond well or don't have
That's what
control
Joe
of
was
themselves.
saying, but
Yes.
and he's right. I mean, he's not wrong, but I guess my counter argument would be I don't know why someone would let other people's responses
Oh,
constrain you from being yourself.
because some of those responses are lethal.
Right. If you're in a
That's what I was
situation where
telling
they're
him.
lethal, yeah, but that's not a normal everyday situation. Or
Yes.
it shouldn't be.
Yeah, but some responses are lethal. Some responses will completely demonetize me. So if I
Well,
need to pay my
yeah,
bills, I had to avoid the response that demonetizes me or the responses that kill me.
yeah, and I think I put another way, Jeff. Agreeing with Hank, concurring is that if that weren't that normal, then I don't think Trump would have won. I think people's ability to overreact and just ruin your life over it is a big part of why Trump won the first
Yeah,
time and why he
and
made
then
a
I go
comeback.
back to you just around the wrong people if that's what's happening. Like
Yeah, but
I've had those people in my life, but I go out of my way to create a life where they're very much reduced and at a minimum.
okay, but if I'm in the wrong valley and there's a landslide, I need to figure out a way to sidestep the boulders until I can get out to a safe valley, right? It's
Yeah,
just
but the ideal is you more or less construct your life where it's lived in a safe valley. The landslide should be an exceptional event.
Yeah,
right.
we
But
attempt to, but sometimes we didn't have enough control from the start to accomplish that task. Like many of these people live in their homes in California.
yeah, it's so I think this is sort of if we're unlucky enough that happens, um,
I
that's the
don't.
thing. And then a big part of then is like thinking like, well, I don't like having to go through all this. Um, am I going to make it difficult for other people to do all that, right? And this is sort of like why it becomes a learning process and where that it can fundamentally change you as a person, and it is that um, if I know that other people can overreact and create problems, I know that other people are probably afraid of that, and so if I want people to know um, that they can not hide around me, I can avoid being somebody who overreacts and clearly
Well,
could have a bad
that's
reaction.
so you want other people to not hide around you, but you're willing to hide around them. That seems like an unfair expectation. Also, I don't like how much of who we surround ourselves with is luck
Yeah,
versus
I,
choice. And welcome, Elena.
yeah. To be consistent, I'll encourage
Hi.
people to hire on me if you have nothing good to offer me. Like, if you look ugly, to keep your camera off. But if you're going to install my appearance, respectfully turn the camera on because you must be an expert in that. So
What?
I don't know what he
Yeah.
said. You're a little too
Yeah.
echoey there,
I think he
Hank.
said don't upstage his beauty.
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Um,
don't stage my beauty when your camera's off.
Or his style.
Yes.
yeah, my camera's off. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're also not insulting my looks, so maybe so. There's no
Uh,
problems.
yeah, I look like Sophia Loren, so I just have a privacy issue. So
And that's
yeah.
understandable.
Yeah.
But there's other people who go around from pound to pound insult people's looks with their camera off, and if they look so good, they should turn it on and just let the image speak for itself.
Yeah, really. I mean, I don't know why people are taking those people seriously in the first place.
Yeah, I know,
Yes.
but yeah, you've never been stalked before, maybe?
I
And
have.
I have been.
I
Okay,
have.
well, same here.
Yeah. So, but if they look but ugly and insulting people, Go fix that.
Sometimes that can't be fixed.
Well, we're men. We're less likely to be stalked based on the way we look. So
Yeah. Yeah. What you guys, you're talking about chaos? Chaos. Woo! Sometimes chaos gives you spice to life.
Yes.
yeah. So Jeff, this is
Uh,
actually a great example. By not showing her face, she's doing a form of masking, right? I show my face, so I'm authentic in this sense. This is what I look
Right, I
like.
guess I'm talking
Right?
about the interface.
This is what my
Yes,
hair looks like.
technically yes.
This is my
So
hair
so
looks like.
physically you're not masking, but
Yeah. So there are some things I'm, the things that I don't think I need to hide, like what I look like, I don't hide, but because my face isn't the part that throws people off.
even with Helena behind
no,
her mask, I feel like I know more about what she thinks and feels about things than you with your face showing.
Well, you might think that, but my
yeah, but
theory of
what?
mind is go on, Helena. I'll let you talk before I say.
No, I mean I've been in the public before. It's just I don't know. You don't need to. I don't know. Maybe at some point, you know, I'll unmask. But no, I've had problems with stalkers. I mean, it's no big deal. It's that's all. That's all it is.
I don't blame anybody for being anonymous in the panelverse. There's many reasons why somebody might choose that.
Yeah, and I would
Yeah.
say that anonymity, just this is my experience, is that um, anonymity necessarily makes it harder for you to know a person. Um, and
No, I
so
don't know.
Not I don't know, not as long as there's a voice that they can use to like talk about what's going on inside of their head and
some
their
people
heart.
can do that, but some people are like, there's this weird thing, like there's this weird saying that you can hear a lot, and usually it goes something like character is who you are when nobody's looking. So it's like, um, if there's nobody around and you see a problem and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to go and fix it because this is what I want. You show your true character. But in my view, character is who you are when lots of people are looking. Character is who you are when you have to make tough choices, where you may be unpopular doing the right thing. That really shows your character. That's why it's we call it a test or something. And I'm not saying that everyone who hides who they are is trying to basically protect themselves from moral consequences, but that is a feature of anonymity that many people will try to use. And then of course some people can seem more generous or understanding when they know that they're safe. But whether or not that's actually how they are and what they actually believe, like you have to know what are they going to do when there's risk. Now, in my case, um, like since I'm not hiding my identity, um, basically it's just anything that I say is I'm prepared to like that just be associated
Mm.
with me. Um, and then if I say like if I basically I know that if I express an opinion here, if I don't volunteer information, Jeff, but if you ask me a direct question, I will give an honest answer.
Yeah,
So
so will
some
I.
of it, yeah. So some of it is me waiting, like, is this information that a person wants? And I
Did you
don't
ever
decide.
work in media before?
Well, so I do write articles, so in that sense, I work in media. Um,
No, like actual media.
like 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 on TV or something.
TV, newspapers, anything like that.
No, no. The only thing I do that comes close is the articles I write online. Um,
Okay, so are you on Substack or something?
I don't know. The platform is Seeking Alpha.
Oh, I don't know. Okay.
It's just for
All right.
investing, so that's why it's called that.
Yeah. No, I worked in media. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, things get pretty dicey. Okay.
Mhm.
It could get pretty dicey. Now, you know, maybe I won't always mask, but I was unmasked many, many years before. And sometimes that leads to certain situations that you wish you weren't in.
Yeah,
Mhm.
scumbags
Um,
harassing you for no good reason. Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Usually
I
because
mean,
they're trying to fight their own demons inside themselves, but they don't know how to reach them. So they fight people in the outside world in hopes to actually tame them.
yeah, I did that for 12 years. So maybe over 12 years. So yeah, yeah, it's complicated why I'm at, why I'm hiding.
Yeah,
Uh,
and yeah, for my case, like if I basically think my identity is not hidden. You know, am I okay with me doing or saying something? It becomes known, and I'm materially impacted by it. Maybe even to the point of my early demise. Right? If I'm okay with that, then then fine. And so there's a certain way that we'll say an ironic way. I'm not saying Jeff is wrong, but there's just sort of an irony in how he feels that um, I'm concealing stuff, and that I feel like my
Well, I'm
approach speaks
talking
to that.
about thoughts and feelings, and you said like, well, if they ask me for it, I'll give it for them. No one's going to ask you, "Hey, Joe, did you just have a thought that I don't know that you had that you're not sharing?" Or what can you tell me the reaction that you're having behind that poker face when I can't even tell you're having a reaction to ask about in the first place?
I may
So,
ask that question.
so it won't be asked like that, but there will be adjacent questions that lead to those answers that will be asked. So, like in work, you know, you'll discuss something with a manager, and some managers, for their good, they'll be like, how do you feel about that? And then I will tell them, right? Um, and
um,
that's one example. And
so
so,
what
I
is
would
this, an
just assume you
authentic?
would tell me. And if you're not telling me, it's because you don't have a feeling.
well, I mean, so
What, this is an authentic test then? Like, oh, if I don't tell you about a feeling I'm having, then I'm not having a feeling? Is that what
No, but
this
we were talking
is?
about masking and like people that are transparent about their reaction, their thoughts and feelings and reactions, and people that kind of keep it hidden and undisclosed so that people don't know they're having anything going on inside of them.
Who doesn't have anything going on inside of them?
Joe
yeah,
keeps a
Everybody
poker
does.
face, and Joe a lot of times has
No,
emotional reactions or thoughts that we can't tell from just looking at him that we find out about later. And I'm the opposite person. I let people know right away when I have a thought or an emotion because I feel like it's information that's useful for them if they're trying to get to know me and build relationships. So I give them all that stuff as it happens up front. And Joe
okay.
will hide it, and you can't even tell it's happening.
Well, I'm in the middle case. I'll show them what I want them to see. It may not be what's going on back in the back here, but I show them something. That way they don't guess.
Well, yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah, I just got punished. I got punished because I showed feelings.
What?
And I know,
By
let me,
who?
okay, I'm not going to say who. I'm not going to say who,
Well, like
but it's like,
who in the context of your story? You don't have to
um,
say who, but in what, like, what, who was this person to you in your life? Is it a total stranger, or is it
no.
somebody that cares about you or that you should
Well, they
care
keep
about?
saying they do. They
Oh,
keep saying they do, but what they did was, if I show a strong emotion, they get really turned off.
then
They
that
get
might
really
not be
turned
the
off by
person.
that.
That might not be a person that belongs in your life.
Yeah,
But
I
like you
know.
look
Yeah.
hot.
Because my approach, and Joe and I talk about this all the time. One of the underlying assumptions of my approach is that I'm using that to filter out the people in my life that all this is happening. Like, so y'all are trying to avoid situations with certain people, and I'm trying to filter those people out of my life so I don't have those situations with them to begin with. So that the people left over are the people I can be myself around, have my feelings, share my thoughts, and not have those negative consequences happen as a result. So we might have completely different goals here around this. I am specifically looking to not be around the people that it seems like
so
a lot of you are describing.
so Jeff, I realized something in the last 5 minutes that I think is interesting, and I think a lot of it is, I think the moment in time that we choose to address things for the, like the expression, um, is a bit different from us. So you're very much in favor of in the moment, and I think I've, if I haven't directly stated it, I said things very close to just pointing out that I will not have an immediate reaction, and I'll often give myself the time to consider it, to think about what my ultimate reaction will be, and that may mean that in the moment I don't do anything, and then I decide later on, how I need to address it. So the example being like um, the stuff with the like I found myself being put off by um, um, the questions people had, like if they find out that I do stocks and that's my career.
Stocks.
Yeah,
Wow.
so yeah, I write, those are the types of articles I write, and so they would want to ask me about it, and it was almost always just something about the Federal Reserve, and usually in the context of, doesn't this make you angry too? Don't you hate the Federal Reserve? Or Nancy Pelosi's stock trades, and it's, doesn't this make you angry? Don't you hate the way she does her own trades? And it was less about like, what are some interesting things to learn just about like the art or science of investment analysis, and more like, I'm on my soapbox, I'm going to beat my chest. Please validate that for me. And I'm sort of feeling in my gut that this is off-putting.
Right,
My
that's a reaction. That's an
I,
initial reaction.
okay,
That's the kind of stuff you mask.
right, and so, but I did not eternally conceal it from you. I basically later told you, hey, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And I
But
thought
in
about
the
why I
moment,
thought
I
that.
had no way of knowing any of that. Like,
But
there was
and
no
here's the thing,
indication. But it was
and I never,
happening in
Um,
the moment, but I wasn't
but I never put anything
detecting
on
it.
you. I never said, Jeff, you let me down because you put me in
No,
the
I'm
panel
not even
deeply
saying that.
red.
You just gave no indication that it was
Right.
even happening.
But that's because
don't you
I
believe a
needed,
little bit in stoicism? You don't believe a little bit in that? Like, I don't know, sometimes things are private. Thoughts, feelings.
Yeah, I think every person has the choice of what they want to share and not share. I'm just saying, if your goal is to get to know people, if your goal is to form community, if your goal is to build interpersonal connections and relationships, it making the choice not to share that kind of stuff makes that more difficult.
so, but here's the thing, I simplified it because what I did is I, looked back on it and I thought about, why did I find this off-putting? Um, what, not just once but multiple times. What is going on here that I'm getting a bad feeling about it? And then what do I need to change? And then, after it happened, I said, hey Jeff, so this is how I feel. I don't want to do this anymore. And you're like, well, why didn't you react in the moment? And the thing is, I wanted to give myself time to process my own internal reaction before I um, had a poorly thought out reaction that could have been, much more likely to be taken the wrong way. Because I know that when they're up there soapboxing and they want their feelings validated about that, if a person looking for validation is immediately met with, um, like sort of an aggressive disagreeableness, that's a good way to burn a bridge on what I would hope would be an ongoing healthy panel where they feel like they can come up and be their authentic selves, right? I'm trying to support you in that goal, Jeff. So that kind
By
of
not
forced
being
me.
your authentic self.
Well, I have to lead by example, and I am being authentic. But the thing is, I'm choosing the moment when I present that. I'm not doing it in the moment. I'm doing it later, and letting you say, "Hey, I thought about this." Right? I am not leaving you in a permanent state of ignorance or outright. I'm not even, and I'm certainly not deceiving
But
you. I'm not
but
giving you false
sometimes you are
information.
like, that was a time when you chose to share down the road after the fact. But there are times when you don't share at all, and then I find out about it later through just random conversation or
Yeah,
Discord
and
chats or
then I think
something.
about it, and I think it's not a big enough deal that I need to worry about it. In which case,
So
it's just
so
I
all I'm
react.
saying is, like, you're choosing to withhold more than you share, and you're making choices to withhold certain things more, like probably more than I am, because I tend to go in the other direction and just disclose every little thing that's happening as it happens. I show it. I let it come to the surface and just display itself. And when I see like a while back, you gave an example of Joe having a reaction and then Joe masking a reaction, and the Joe having the reaction gave me much more information to work with. When I can see the reaction happening in the moment as it's happening, than if you describe it to me dispassionately later.
Mhm.
Well, I actually get the same amount of information with both. So
Right. And so, but my whole point is, I'm aware that like, um, I can give myself time to sort of realize my own feelings and make sure I understand what I'm feeling before I put it out to other people and hope that they're going to understand it, even though they're not me and I haven't even given myself the moment to do that. And that's just sort of the relationship I have with my own emotions at this point. And I
Yeah,
find that that's something that works well.
I'm starting to understand that. And Colt, I'm not. Let's see. I would prefer. It's not that I prefer that they do that. I, all I'm saying. The point I'm making is that when they do that, it makes it more difficult to to meet my goal of getting to know them. So we have different goal. We're working at cross purposes when that happens. I'm not telling them not to do it. I'm not judging their preference for doing it. I'm saying in the context of building relationships, it's counterproductive for me personally. Like I am able to much more successfully build a relationship with that person when I can see all of that stuff, when I have access to it in the moment.
Huh.
Yeah. And I think another thing too is when we talk about what's happening in our heads, a big part of it is like, I feel like there's been this discussion I've heard in like lots of podcasts about the illusion of the self, and we think of the self as this like essentially this singular coherent entity that's just sort of living in our skulls. And but when we look at how the brain actually functions, and if we even think about our own thought processes, we find that the self is like a bunch of things interacting at once. And so there's stuff happening in your prefrontal cortex that tell you to do one thing. There's something that's happening in your amygdala that's telling you to do something else. And usually the amygdala is associated with anger and fear responses and impulsiveness. The prefrontal cortex is forward thinking, rational, inhibition, right? And we can see some of the differences here. Like if you just drink enough alcohol, the chemical change in your brain will change the way you behave. And so this is to some extent how deterministic some of it is. But knowing that, I think, well, what part of my brain do I want me to guide what I'm doing? And I'm like, to the extent that I have self and individuality, the vast majority of that is in my prefrontal cortex. The logic driven is the rational. It's the
Well, I
part
think it's
capable of
all of it.
abstract driven. I mean, it's all of it, but it's like that needs to be leading the team, right? That needs to be leading the sled team, and the other things are just they're part of it. They're contributing, but they're not governing the direction of things. And so it's sort of it just if I can go back to what the Helena said about stoicism, it's not about having no passions, because that's usually how it's understood is you don't feel things, but it's about being a
No,
master of your passions rather
no,
than a
I'm
slave to them. Now, I'm not saying you said that.
well.
I'm talking
I
about
mean,
what other people think of stoicism as you just purge yourself of emotion, and it's
I
rather
don't
it's
think of it that
no,
way.
no. It's
but
like
a lot of
okay,
people do.
okay. So you have Bruce Wayne.
Mhm.
Bruce Wayne, he did Stoicism. You know, there's a reason why he did it because he was Batman. He
yeah,
You know,
was
it's
so he
Batman.
keep his criminal zoo, his
you know,
favorite part of the city,
there's an
Arkham
interesting
Arkham Criminal Zoo.
thing. I'd say very interesting you bring him up, because I have thought about that character a lot, and there are different interpretations of him, but in most of them, I get the impression that Batman is really who he is, and Bruce Wayne is this fake
Yeah, I've
persona
heard
he
that.
puts on.
I think
I've
Um,
heard
Robin's
that.
sexier anyway. He's much more
Robin?
appealing to me.
Oh,
Some
Who
say
played
complex.
Robin in the what is the Michael Keaton version?
the
I don't
Michael
remember.
Keaton version.
Yeah, like
I don't think he
the
had a.
big Batman movie, the reboot. Did they have a
What?
Robin?
No,
Michael
Oh,
Keaton
they
didn't
didn't even
have a
have a
Robin.
Robin?
I
No.
think in
No, it was like
the
George Clooney. It was
yeah,
like
there,
George
Batman and
Clooney.
Robin. Batman and Robin had George Clooney, and I think it was Crispin Glover was Robin in that. I think that was his name. Was that his name?
Oh my God,
No,
that's
No, it
it was
was
Chris McDonald.
Chris.
Chris
Yeah,
McDonald. Yeah, that
yeah,
was it.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
Then it had Uma Thurman, and was it
Yeah,
Schwarzenegger, Mr.
she
Freeze?
was she was
oh, he's
Poison
Mr.
Ivy,
Freeze.
Yeah,
and yeah, he was Mr. Freeze. Uma was Poison Ivy. Yeah, and Chris McDonald was Robin.
Oh right,
Um,
okay. But oh
yeah,
okay. I just assumed he was in the first one. Yeah, I just looked it up. There
no,
was no Robin.
yeah, there was no
yeah.
Robin in it. Yeah, the Michael Keaton movies. No, it's okay. Uh, what do you do when you show everything all at once that people get like they seem to get mad at you
I check
or
those
they get
people off my
repulsed?
list and move on and say,
Well,
okay,
that's
well, you're just,
well,
I guess you're not my people. And I find the
okay.
ones that don't get mad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, um,
I'm not saying there's not social. It can be a lonely path, and there's consequences to it. I'm just saying that the inner price is worth it. Like the alternative to me is much much more costly in the long run.
hmm,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess.
Mentally,
yeah.
mental health, which is my top priority, emotional health, all of that. I am subjectively better off mentally, emotionally, spiritually, even when I'm able to freely share all of that without negative consequences. And
Yeah,
I also try to allow other people to do that. So it's reciprocal and mutual. It's not just me going around having whatever emotion and thought I want and me shutting everybody else down. And it creates a community where everybody can do that. And we can all grow from that experience.
Hmm.
yeah, and I will say there are some sort of like, and they're more longitudinal. Like when you express something about yourself, there's something you can express in the moment, but then um, there's also things that, whether you choose to express in the moment or not, you essentially express about yourself in the long term. So I think um, um, one thing that I'm expressing about myself um, by not being expressive is that I am willing to wait and consider something before I'm firm. Like, this is how I feel and want to deal with it. I'm willing to sort of give things some time, and that, you know, that says something about me. So you learn
But
something
I'm
about.
only getting part of the picture because when I do see those little non-longitudinal moments, I have to go in and I have to fill in with those.
Well, yeah, because if you don't get it all at once, you're going to start out with part of the picture, and it will fill in over time, as I fill it in myself over time. And a lot of people don't do that. You're absolutely right. Some people just don't do that, and they're just, oh lordy lord, and they're just out and about, right? And you know, it's you know, we can think of some people are like that. You yourself say you're a bit like that, Jeff, right? But and that's
Then
how
we
you
have
are.
Hank, and this is a great point that he makes because Hank's always masking. And yet he's kind of always disclosing at the same time, and I feel like I know Hank. I don't have an issue that he's holding back, but he is all the time. He has his own little game he's playing, but I guess it doesn't register as much as somebody that's just always hiding behind a poker face, and I never know. Like so, Hank lets you see enough to, I guess, satisfy that curiosity to where you don't so much focus on the parts that he's not letting you see. But when someone's letting you see almost nothing, then I think that just sharpens the focus that they're masking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
Hank,
learned this from Sans from Undertale.
The what?
The game, Undertale. I learned this from Sans.
Undertale?
Yeah, a
Undertale.
game that came out literally 10 years ago.
Oh,
We need,
okay.
we
That
need
you
to get Jeff to play
that you
that.
don't know about.
Jeff should play that on stream. That would be funny.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
looking it up now.
Yeah. A game from literally 10 years ago that you just heard about today.
Yeah, probably
Yeah,
one of the
I'm not
best
a
indie
video
games ever
gamer.
made.
That's most video games.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
That's most
No.
anything.
The player
Well,
controls a child and completes objectives in order to progress through the story. Yeah, I could put it on the list.
Yeah.
hmm.
And so and I agree, Jeff, that um uh like you still need to keep the mindset of then they're not your people, and you can't cut yourself off so much that you don't allow yourself to figure that out. And um now I certainly, 'cause I don't really feel like I have to go around faking anything just to get by. I think I'm at a point now where I have figured out enough that um
Yeah,
you
have
know
you ever been called a bitch?
yeah, I
Yes.
have.
You
I'm
have?
handle. I mean, on the Pussy Post panel, I keep calling him the bitch.
And I probably will again sometime at some
Oh,
point.
okay.
Although
Just asking.
How
when a
many
guy is
times
called
have you been
that,
called a bitch? I guess that's the question. And
Oh, I don't know.
how much did it bother you?
I don't know. It always bothers me.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think I know why. At least why some of those, what could have informed some of those times you've been called it is um, the way you talk. You sound like um, a suburban mother, and not in a bad way, but just your voice isn't high pitched as female voices go, and you are articulate.
she learned to talk that way. She
Yeah,
went to
Yeah.
classes.
I learned to speak the way that I speak. Like this, I'm from the South. Do I sound like a Southerner? You sound like
No.
you're from Louisiana. Do I sound like I'm from North Carolina, Joe? No.
Only if
Um,
you're a nerd.
Yeah, you sound like a nerd. They sound
You
the
sound
same
like a
everywhere.
nerd.
yeah. And so and I like the way that she talks because I get the impression that she's thinking carefully about what she says. But some people might think that she's like they might hear this judgy finger waggy type of lady, and maybe that's how they interpret some of what she does. Probably for media things, like if you're going to appear on TV, it helps to sound like her. But when people hear someone talk like that in real life, some people don't respond well to it.
Uh, yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. So, what are you supposed to sound like? What is the ideal way to sound like?
Well, is this the normal way for you to talk? With going back to a
Yeah.
different way of
Yeah. This
talking?
is the way I talk. This
So
is the way I talk.
yeah, so this is the way I talk. Like as I was growing up as a kid, um, I started, um, um, I had some things where I think I sounded more Southern, but basically my mother, who was not a Southerner, complained about it, and so I worked
Huh.
on not doing that. And even though,
That's
uh,
child abuse.
um, she would say I would have to I was gonna have to start putting like a dime or a penny in a jar every time she heard me say ain't or something like that.
Oh
Well,
And she would say,
oh, I can't
she'd be
listen to this.
like that sounds ignorant, and she'd always shame the way Southerners talk. It doesn't make sense that she
You
married a
said you're
Southern
triggered,
man
Jeff?
and moved to the South. But to me, I'm like, okay,
oh,
I have to listen to my mother here. I shouldn't talk like this. And so over the years, I was mindful of my speech, and I got better at it. Well, we'll say better, right? Because obviously, I'm sure Jeff agrees that's not better. It's the way you talk, right? But here's the thing. This is how I learned to talk. And it's like, well, go back to the way you were originally going to talk. I don't know how to do it. I can't reverse engineer that. This is the way I talk now.
yeah. This is the way I talk too.
So I'm in some ways my voice is a residual and perpetual prisoner of my my childhood and upbringing.
Well,
How does that sound,
you know,
Jeff? Does that sound authentic enough for you?
no, my parents didn't bully me into talking a certain way. It wasn't them. It was just some weird circumstances that I fell into, and so now I talk like this.
Hmm.
So
I thought you said you
that's
had
it.
gone through training.
Yeah, I did,
Oh,
but it didn't have anything to do with my parents.
right.
Mhm.
The school decided it. I basically had elocution lessons, and then I had performance communications, and then I had blah
Stage.
blah blah. Yeah,
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 it works well to bellow
yeah.
out as well. Joe, you should know this as well from being in the military. You have to be precise, coherent, and
Mhm.
your bellow voice. If you've got to get people knowing what's going on, in the heat of things, not like silent stuff, because that's all Chinese whispers if you're not careful enough. Yeah.
Right. So there was a point where some of that influenced my speech that I think carries with me to the present day.
Of course it would
Whereas
do, man.
you have to be used to talking at different volumes. But another thing too is, and this is something that I learned more as an adult, where I realized that what my mother taught me was limited, is you have to learn how to notice how other people talk so you can talk to
Yeah.
them and adjust
Yeah.
accordingly.
Oh yeah, I didn't learn that at
Yeah,
all.
it's called
Oh, Joe,
empathy. It's called
hang on.
empathy.
Let me interject here. Remember, Jeff, we were talking about that thing I said that is we have unconscious bias, right? So I would say,
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
yeah,
vaguely.
I would say I will always have a bias to a person that has served in a military, no matter where they're from. If they were Chinese
That sounds
military,
conscious though, like
or
you're aware of it.
no, of course, no, well, no, but I still have a bias on that.
Oh,
The
okay.
it's still on that, and it will always be because of my. I'd have to stop it. Like, oh shit, I know, but it's the same thing. The unconscious bias is there. What we have, but yeah, that's that.
It's the unconscious part that I get caught up on because it sounds like you're very aware of that you have a preference for military people, which I think is fine.
No, of
Well,
course, because I was
Everybody
in
has
the
a
military.
preference.
But there was always preference. There was always things that you're gonna. It's not just a gut feeling, is it? It's things you stay away from, people you don't want to mix with, right?
Right,
Those-
but you consciously people do all this.
I think what he's saying is that just by knowing I was in the military, even if my summary of it was that it was just a training context, he knows that like he can imagine a future where Joe, I need you to go with what I say and just trust that I know what I'm talking about, and then we'll hash it out if it's bad after
Right,
the
but all of that seems to be happening with awareness in the consciousness. It doesn't seem to be going on
but
beyond
sometimes
awareness.
but sometimes I wouldn't think that, as in I would always assume and to find out and see the behavior of somebody before they say, because lots of people ain't going to come around and say that. Believe me.
Yeah, but like it's like there's just certain things that immediately click when he has that information. Let's say there's a Jeff Panelverse meetup in real life, right? And then wherever we go, like let's say there's like a publicly violent situation, like a deranged shooter comes in, right? If he knows that he wants to respond to it and he wants to have one helper, he knows, hey, I can give Joe a task and say, hey, help
Right,
me
but
do
he
this.
knows that consciously.
Well, but his feeling that he has the bias, like he might have moments where he doesn't realize he's so happy about this, and then he's looking back and say, "Oh, I just."
He just describe everything he describes sounds like it's stuff he realizes. That's why it's the
maybe he did it for a
unconscious
while.
tag I
Well,
get caught up
um,
on.
Aren't you overthinking it a little much?
What is overthinking? Like, what point am I supposed to
I don't know.
not
Like
stop
if somebody
thinking
gives
about
you,
it? I'm a
well,
thinker. That's what I do.
Okay,
I'm
let me
thinking
clarify.
exactly the right amount.
well, because somebody talks and somebody might give you a bad vibe, and then you just react to it, and that's it. And it's not necessarily, oh, let me analyze this person. It's like, oh, I don't think I like that person. Yeah, I mean, don't you guys have instincts? You have instincts, right?
Yeah. So the unconscious
Yeah, but
part is
I'm
when you have
aware.
a
Like
feeling.
if I'm reacting to a person because I get a bad vibe, I'm aware of it. It's not unconscious.
Yeah, you're aware of the vibe, but you may not be aware of all the reason behind the vibe yet.
Right, right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so again, why do you think so many people say that there's a racist a problem in America or the world to say against Africans, African Americans, whatever? Because they do it in Korea, in Japan, in China. The bigger parts of the world. It's true. It has always been there. I can see it even with the tribalism of the
Right. It's
culture.
tribalism.
Right?
It's
No,
because we're human. Every human has it.
no, but
Does it?
yeah, but
And it's
specifically because
cultural.
of melatonin, that's mainly because of it. Or is it, that if we're going a higher above thinking, what is
I
it
don't
about?
think most people care about the color of someone's skin in this day and age. Maybe they did
Well,
in the
why?
past.
Yeah,
then
most
why-
people don't care, but when they do care, they care a lot. They care so
Yeah.
much that they have to erase the person.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I also
yeah.
I think
But
it's
we have equality laws.
much more rare than in the past.
Yeah, probably.
Just like gay, they don't care about gay people as much as they did 30
Who
years
has
ago.
their
either.
TV on? Somebody has their TV on?
That's the coffee shop. That's live TV. Joe is in a coffee shop.
Oh. Oh. I didn't realize. No.
Mhm.
I thought somebody was watching TV.
It sounds like it sometimes. It's his ambient noise.
Okay.
Yeah, Joe was in a sitcom.
Speaking of coffee, I'm gonna go get some more. I will be right back.
So Helena, on the topic of voice things, I think there's an interesting thing as well. Is so one, I just want to confirm. I was at least somewhat correct that some of why people have called you that mean word before is because of your voice, and they're getting the wrong vibe from the way you sound, right? And
I
it
don't
just
know. I
okay.
think I don't know. I've always been good at calming people down.
Oh, okay. Well, the reason I said that is because um, it's like I like the sound of the voice. I like the way you talk, but I can somehow see how I can imagine how people react to a voice that sounds like that. And then another thing is this was something that I thought was really strange and only really happened with Jeff's audience, and I think it's a Gen X thing. Is for like the first 2 or 3 weeks I was on these panels, a lot of people, especially guys, kept asking like if I was gay, and somehow the way I
You were
talk,
gay.
they think I'm gay, and I'm just thinking that's strange, but no. And eventually, after I confirmed it enough times, people stopped asking that. But it was just like and that's also like a different thing. I was going to say with this is actually what made me think of it is if if a guy gets called a bitch, it's usually for opposite reasons. If a
Well,
woman is called a bitch, it's because she's harsh, and if a guy is called a bitch, it's usually because he's too soft.
uh-huh. Yeah. In real life, I don't get called a bitch. It's
Okay.
just maybe I'll write something and something like that, and it's like, what are you, a bitch? And it's like, no, I don't think so. Also, it's not coming off here. It's not coming off really well here, but I have a good sense of humor.
Oh yeah.
So, and I mean, I don't know. It's more like when I'm writing something or in real life, you know that term, manic dream pixie girl? Do you know what that is? Do you know what that is?
Managing Pixie Girl.
Yeah,
Manic,
it's Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Yeah,
yeah,
it's supposed to be a chick that's pretty much a yandere for you, pretty much.
Okay,
yeah,
I think I know. I think I get it.
yeah. Okay, so men, they want to get involved with me, and they cast me as that. And if I show any emotion that they don't like, they're like, ugh, you're human? Ew. So I don't know. I had bad experiences with that sort of thing. So, and the
Do you
way I
keep
talk is the
dating
way I
them
talk.
after that?
No,
Uh,
no, no,
Yeah.
I
that
think
would be
that's more
ridiculous.
interesting, to be honest.
I had a similar thing, a similar problem. My last relationship, well, my only relationship, but it was like I didn't have the emotional response that she wanted, and I was
Oh,
like, once it was clear like that was the main problem, I'm like, okay, time to get out of this. Although I don't know if it was what maybe if it were different emotions that were expected in each of our situations, but yeah, like it's like a thing where um, yeah, I could see how that would be an issue.
yeah.
the whole concept of expecting certain emotions is weird to me because emotions just arise naturally in response to things, and it's who that
Yeah, I
person
know.
is. So to have some preconceived expectation of what emotions should be coming out of them is just
Oh,
strange.
well, here's the thing. They're doing what you're doing, Jeff. They're sorting through people, so they don't respond the way they want. They'll get rid of them. So
Hey, Helena, you should watch Memoir of a
Hi.
Snail, or what's it?
Memoir of a snail?
Memoir of a Snail, or there's another one before. This director's awesome. The other one is Max and I think, Mary and Max. But the other one,
Mary.
Memoir of a Snail, is fucking
This looks
brilliant.
cool. It's animated.
Yeah, it's fucking the
Oh,
best. It's the story of. I mean, it's how fucking right tragicness, right? How tragic life really is, and the tragic parts that we forget, and what people have to go through, what they endure, and who they become, and they just live through it to the end of their lives. You know, where it's all so fucking bad and really bad, but you have to just keep on going forward because you cannot go back. You know what I mean? You can always have that memory of where you
So
don't let it
yeah,
lead you to the future, and you'd
just
love
go
it.
forward.
Yeah, man. That's one of the things she says. One of the women says the snails don't ever go back on their tracks; they only go forward, and it's brilliant. It's like yeah, I see it, and there's lots of these little outtakes on situations. If you get it, there's loads of it, and to fulfill because you know that's life,
Yeah,
and I love that. I love
I,
every
I
moment.
never saw those. I never saw those, and I like movies, but I never saw those. So I'll look them
Well,
up.
they're Australian. Just stream it, watch it. You'll like it. I
Yeah,
swear.
I believe you. I believe you.
Give me your review
Yeah,
when you
I'll look
watch
this
it.
up. What's that?
I said, give me your review when you watch it. So
Okay,
tell me what you think.
okay, I'll do that. Uh, yeah, yeah. I used to be a art critic. Actually, they
Oh,
paid me for
wow.
it. That was part of my job, and so yeah, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. Um, where are you, African? Oh no, don't tell me where you are. I'm sorry. That was yeah, I shouldn't have asked that.
Why?
You're in the UK, right?
Yeah, I
It's
am.
just another way of asking.
Oh, okay. All right, that's all. You don't have to say anything else.
It's
Yeah,
fine.
sorry. I was just curious.
I am.
Um, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
I grew up in Africa. All that stuff, you
Oh,
know. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm sure we've spoken before.
I don't know if I saw the episode where you talked about your where you grew up, but maybe I did. I don't know. But
Um,
okay.
there we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will watch those. I will watch those. And uh I think it's weird uh that somebody called me I sounded like a suburban mom because I'm not a mom. And I'm not a mom. Okay. So but that's okay. It's all right. You know, I had to be a teacher too.
Are
Did you
you
want to be a
suburban?
mum? Do you want to be a mum?
No.
You don't. All right. Could you still? Or are you the age?
Sometimes teaching cures you of that.
Yeah, yeah, I was a teacher, so I was a teacher too. And I just thought it was funny. That's all.
You sound like the kind of mom who'd be like talking to her toddler. Toddler's like, blah, blah, blah. They're not even. They're just kind of making noises, and the mom says, "Use your words." You know, just
Use your word.
clear,
Well,
very clear to the point, right? Like,
yeah, yeah, use your words. I try to use it for humor sometimes. Uh, yeah, it's because sometimes it could be funny. You know, when you talk like this, it's sometimes you could be funny. And so, but it was just funny that you said I sounded like a suburban mom. Oh God, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm laughing my ass off here. Okay. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna talk to you later. Have a good day, all of you.
you too.
Okay, you too,
Oh,
Bye.
Helena.
be
Bye.
Good
safe.
seeing you again.
Take care.
I still want to know if she's suburban. Like, if you got that part right. Because I wouldn't know an urban from a suburban mom. How do urban moms talk?
I don't know. Listen to like New York or Bostonian women,
Oh.
but uh, you
I
know,
would say it's attitude rather. It's the attitude of the woman, and how they,
Oh.
no matter what they,
Like urban, she doesn't have that urban grit.
yeah, you know it.
well, there's like urban grit, and there's also like rural grit. So urban is like they're kind of out of the. There's a certain amount of chaos that comes with, um, like I guess urban and rural lives in different ways. and the people in the suburbs is quiet, and it's sort of like,
More predict. Oh
you know,
yeah.
you think about the mom at home, right? She can just sort of take her time, and she's read the psychology books, so she's like, okay, like don't terrify your children, but be firm with them, right? Kind of thing. So she's, you know, very. Whereas a lot of people kind of figure out things, and they learn how to become effective parents. And I know she's not a mom, but I'm just saying, like, she's talking the way I imagine those mothers talk, or I have often heard them talk.
Yeah, I kind of get it now.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to make sure I'm not accidentally making people think she's a mom, but and obviously there are mothers who don't talk like that, right? And some may yet live in the suburbs, but it's just sort
And
of
if you
the
said
general.
suburban housewife, people would assume she was married, has a husband.
Yeah,
And like suburban lady doesn't convey
right. Because
fully what you were trying to convey either.
right, because it's like I think the mom is like, you think the parent has to teach things to their kids and know how to
Yeah.
explain things to them and set an example. And a housewife, you almost think of someone who's not talking much, right?
Yeah,
Sounds
but
suburban.
do you negate the understanding there that there is no way for a mother-daughter relationship as they grow up? Think about it. You know, you go through that period, Grace, when they become a woman. You know, their intelligence, if you will, their system is based on time, where ours is not as men, right?
Mhm.
For where their use of, you know, it's all biological. There's nothing more than that. That's why women go through the menopause and we don't.
What is he talking about? I'm so
I don't,
lost.
I don't care. I'm just not listening to him. But with
Oh.
the suburban mom thing, pretty much that's like a southern thing. We pretty much me and North don't even have that terminology. So I had to figure out what you mean context, because any female could be a mom. So that's the way we
Yeah,
use it
that's
up
true.
here.
Yeah, it's suburban culture. I kind of know what Joe's talking about now. It's that suburban culture, culturally suburban. Well, I have a thing to go to in a little while, so I'm gonna have to wind down.
Well, this
That's
was a
why
good
Joe and
panel
I
today.
did our show early today.
Yeah.
But I'll probably be out later, chipping away some more at that game. I'm making a
Well,
lot of progress. I
I
finally
hope
got
that
started
appointment
to the
goes
game.
well.
Huh?
I hope that appointment goes well.
It's not an appointment. I'm actually going meet. It's these random strangers in a coffee shop that are like.
Oh,
It's for community building. They're like, let's build community and have a weekly event where strangers can come and meet each other. So I have no idea what to expect. It could be a bunch of old ladies knitting. It could be weird artsy people.
Just
It
be
could be
careful, Jeff, man.
LGBT people.
It
I
could
don't
be
know what I'm
crazy
walking
people.
into.
It could be crazy people, man. It could be
It could be
dead.
crazy people. It's at a coffee shop
Right.
slash
Get you out of the
bookstore.
country,
So
you
that
know.
alone, I think, like how wrong can you go at a bookstore coffee
It
shop?
won't be it won't be that big of a problem.
I doubt
Bookstore
it's a
people
gay
come.
orgy. It's a woman that's
Oh, that's
organizing it.
disgusting. Oh,
Yes, and I'll be taking this Yeti orb back to the store since my new Zil Sound microphone is doing good enough.
it's
Mike said
very,
your microphone sounds
very
awesome
echoey. It
today.
was very echoey.
Oh.
I find there's a lot of echo in that room. You need a like kind of sound barrier, you know.
Are you gonna buy it for me, or no?
Well,
I don't care. I can turn the echo down some more, but if you're not gonna
He
buy
told
it
you
for
what you
me,
could do with
I
your
really don't
opinion.
care.
I care about this.
You might as well ask me to grow to 6 foot tall at this point.
Wow. Well, I don't know.
Exactly my point.
What's that got to do with it? I'm just saying. You sound echoey in that
You
room.
sound like a suburban black man.
Yeah, you sound like. Yeah, there we go.
Wait, you're going to Vegas? Oh my God, I'm so jealous. And are you going to stream it? I just saw a video where they have some rainbow tunnel under the city now that people, like taxis, can go through. Oh, Zephyr. Oh, I want to accompany you on as much of this journey as I can. All right. Well, take care, everybody. This is a good conversation. We'll do more of it. I'll be out tomorrow, the usual time.
Be safe, Joe.
right.
And now
Yeah.
confirmed I do like those things.
Joe, thanks for showing up, talking about chaos. Thanks for sharing your chaos with us and your order.
Right.
Yes. I think you bring more order than chaos. A
Definitely.
lot of people appreciate that. And Hank, thank you for your thoughts on chaos as well, and order and
Your
disorder
service, sir. Cheers.
from a real life Discordian African. You as well.
Cheers,
Take
mate.
care. Thank you. And cheers, everyone. All right, let me go see what this is about. This event. I might be back in 5 minutes. I might be there a couple of hours. Oh, and as I said, depending on what happens, I may swing by McDonald's on my way back and pick up some fries. So I'll catch you all later. I'm sure I'll be out tonight, discoing away, and yeah, that. But I'll definitely be out tomorrow. I think I'm gonna pick up the myth thing and talk about education. How do we learn the stories that we do learn about society, and to what purpose? All right, take care, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Have fun. Do something exciting, fun, enriching, self-improving. I don't know. Do what you want. Have fun. See you later. Take care. Healthy.